Hello students, today we will discuss about the total expenditure method. Total expenditure method of measuring elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand. How to measure the elasticity of demand with the help of total expenditure method, or sometimes we call it total outlay method. So what is total expenditure? Total expenditure is the total money spent, total amount spent on a commodity. एक commodity पे कितना amount हमने spend किया है, that becomes the total expenditure, that is total outlay. The elasticity of demand can also be measured with the help of this total expenditure method or total expenditure made on a commodity. The total expenditure, it is product of price and quantity demand. That is, total expenditure is price multiplied by quantity. So this total expenditure changes due to change in price or due to change in quantity. So according to this equation, this total expenditure changes with the change in either price or due to change in quantity. When there is change in price, and quantity demand also changes, which changes, these two brings change in total expenditure. So when there is change in price, quantity demand and total expenditure, we can measure the elasticity of demand, or we can see different degrees of elasticity of demand. This is the method. Under this method shows us different degrees of elasticity of demand, different degrees of elasticity of demand when total expenditure changes due to change in price and quantity demand. So we can know the different degrees of elasticity of demand. Generally, we have 5 degrees of elasticity of demand, which we have already discussed. These are unit elastic, perfectly elastic, we have perfectly inelastic, we have high elastic, we have inelastic. So these degrees of elasticity of demand can be measured or known with the help of the total expenditure method. Before discussing different degrees, we must know the demand schedule first, how total expenditure changes when there is change in this price and quantity demand. So for knowing the total expenditure method, to know about the total expenditure method, we have to make the demand schedule. And when we have price and we have quantity demand, so as we know, total expenditure is the price multiplied by quantity. So we have then elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand. For example, price is 11, quantity demand is 0. Price is 10, quantity demand is 1. Price is 9, quantity demand 2. As price falls, quantity demand rises. 8, 3, 7, 4, 6, 5, 5, 6, 5, 6, 4, 7, 3, 8, 2, 9, 1, 10, 0, 11. So this total expenditure is P multiplied by Q, 11 into Z. This is 0, 10, 18, 24, 7 fours, 28, 30. This is 30, 28, 24, 18, 10, 0. So how to measure the elasticity of demand? We have a method, elasticity of demand measurement, delta Q by delta P into P upon Q. But sometimes this formula gives us misleading results. For example, if we take price 11, quantity demand 0, price change is 11 from 11 to 10, and quantity demand change is 0 to 1. So if we change this interchangeably, if we take price 10, quantity demand 1, price 11, quantity demand 0, this will give us the misleading results. So for avoiding that confusion, we use the formula for this. Delta Q is generally, we use the formula delta Q is Q1 minus Q2 divided by delta P is P1 minus P2 into P upon Q. It is P1 plus P2 divided by Q1 plus Q2. This is average of price and average of quantity. Let us see the elasticity of demand according to this formula. For example, here elasticity of demand will be at price 11, quantity demand 0, quantity demand is 0, first quantity. This is Q1 and this is Q2. Q2 is minus 1 divided by P1 is 11 minus 10 into P1 P2. P1 is 11 plus 10 divided by Q1 0 plus 1. Here 0 minus 1 divided by, this is also plus 1, 0 minus 1 minus 1, 11 minus 10, it is 1. Here it is P1 is 11, P2 is 10, it is 21 divided by plus 1. Then it becomes minus 21 divided by, this is 1 minus 1. This is minus 21. It's minus 21. When we use, for example, this formula, delta Q by delta P, change in quantity is minus 1 divided by change in price is 1 into, this is 11, this is 11, and Q is 0. This is minus 11 divided by 0. This is then infinity. So from this formula, this is 2 minus 21 by 1, or it is very high means very high means very high means infinity. Very high means infinity. When we go on, and when price is 10, quantity demand 1, price changes from 10 to 9, quantity demand from 1 to 2, we get the elasticity of demand minus 6.3. Then we have minus 3.4. Then we have minus 1.4. Then we have 1. Here it is minus 1.4. This elasticity is for this is for this, ये इसके लिए, ये इनके लिए, तो इसी तरह ये वाला इसके लिए, अगर ये इनके दरमियान है, ये इसके दरमियान है, तो ये वाला इसके दरमियान है, ये वाला इसके दरमियान है, ये इसके दरमियान है, इसी तरह 0.69. 0.45, 0.28, 0.15, and lastly it is 0. So this is how to calculate the elasticity of the amount by the formula. Still we don't have touch with that. Now we will proceed towards the total expenditure. What total expenditure is this? When we look up on this table, from 11 we have three stages here. This stage is when elasticity of demand is more than 0. It's more than 1, sorry. This stage is when elasticity of demand is 1, and this stage shows when elasticity of demand is, here elasticity of demand is more than 1, here elasticity of demand is equal to 1, here elasticity of demand is less than 1. When we this phase, it shows that as price falls, from this to this, price falls. Here price falls. The quantity demand rises and total expenditure also rises from this to this. यहाँ से यहाँ तक total expenditure rise होता है. अगर हम उल्टा जाएंगे 6, 7, 8 जब when price increases. So the first stage is according to total expenditure method. From the diagram, according to total expenditure method. From the table, we see number first. When price falls, the total expenditure rises. And when price rises and total expenditure falls, जब हम 6, 7, 8 टोटल ये प्राइस राइज होता है, टोटल एक्सपेंडिचर फॉल होता है, the elasticity of demand is more than 1 or high elastic. So total expenditure method हमें दिखाता है when price falls, total expenditure rises, or when price rises and total expenditure falls, the elasticity of demand is more than 1, or the elasticity of demand is high elastic or elastic. Number second, अगर ये स्टेज हम उठाएंगे 6, 5, 5, 6, the elasticity of demand is 1. When price falls or rises, when price falls or rises, 6, 5, 5, 6 total expenditure same. ये देखना है यहाँ टोटल, यहाँ प्राइस फॉल होता है, टोटल एक्सपेंडिचर सेम, प्राइस राइज होता है तो टोटल एक्सपेंडिचर. व्हेन प्राइस फॉल्स और राइजेस, द टोटल एक्सपेंडिचर remains same. The elasticity of demand is unit elastic. Demand is unit elastic. Or elasticity of demand is equal to 1. So when price falls or rises, whether price fall or rise, but when total expenditure remains the same due to price fall or rise, the elasticity of demand is unit elastic. Number third, from this stage to this stage, here we see when price falls, the total expenditure also falls. 30, 28, 24, 18, 10. The total expenditure also falls. Or when price rises, the total expenditure also rises. The elasticity of demand is inelastic. Elasticity of demand is inelastic or less elastic. Job when there is direct relationship between price and total expenditure. The velocity of demand will be less than 1. Less than 1. So we can say that when there is opposite relationship between price and total expenditure, when there is opposite relationship between price and total expenditure, that is price follows, total expenditure rises, price rises, total expenditure follows, the velocity of demand is more than 1. When price follows or rises, the total expenditure remains the same, the velocity of demand is unit elastic or it is equal to 1. When there is direct relationship, we can show it diagrammatically. We can show it diagrammatically, the relationship between price and total expenditure. So we can make a good relationship between this total expenditure and this diagrammatic representation of total expenditure method. किस तरह हम दिखाएंगे? If we have a diagram here, along OX, for example, I will show total expenditure, and along OY I will show price. When there is opposite relationship, this relationship, that means when total expenditure, price falls, the total expenditure rises. Price falls and total expenditure, price is this, total expenditure is this much. Price falls, total expenditure increases. So this is the stage of when elasticity of demand is more than 1. This is the first stage. When price falls, there is inverse relationship between price and total expenditure from A to B. For example, this curve shows that this is high elastic demand. When there is opposite relationship between total expenditure and price. For example, when there is next stage from B, it shows price falls or price rises, total expenditure remains the same. So total expenditure remains the same. When total expenditure remains the same, due to fall or rise in price, the velocity of demand is equal to 1. Also, when this stage comes, it shows from C to D, it shows velocity of demand less than 1. That means this is the third stage. When price falls or when price falls, the total expenditure also falls. When price rises, the total expenditure also rises from C to D. So from A to B, it shows high elastic demand, and from B to C, it shows unit elastic demand, and from C to D, we have inelastic demand. That is what we study here, how total expenditure method explains different degrees of elasticity of demand. When there is inverse relationship between opposite relationship between price and total expenditure, the elastic of demand is more than 1 or high elastic. When there is no relation, or we can say price falls or rises, the total expenditure remains the same. So there is no relationship between total expenditure and price. That means total expenditure remains the same due to fall or rise in price. The velocity of demand is 1. When there is direct relationship between price and total expenditure, that means when price falls, total expenditure also falls. Price rises, total expenditure also rises. This is the inelastic stage of velocity of demand. Thank you very much.